Right, so got this bad boy out of its cradle and stripped down. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the wiring, because if you're doing one yourself it may or may not be a little bit confusing to you. So essentially what we've got coming, in terms of wires coming out of this, we've got the earth wire which goes to the negative of the battery, and that's just bolted onto the casing here. We've got the positive, the main positive, which goes to the main positive on the battery, and that goes to one of the poles, the big poles on the starter solenoid. And then the other wires, in terms of connecting it to a control panel or to the van, the wires that we need to pay attention to, so the main wires coming out of this generator assembly here, we've got these two, which are the 12 volt output. So there's obviously some windings here outputting 12 volt DC, so there's some rectification going on in here, because the panel on the front here, these DC output, so we're getting that in shot, yeah, so the DC output here on the panel, these two wires literally went straight to the DC output, and the positive went through a fuse assembly here, but straight. So what I'm saying is there's a 12 volt output coming straight out of here, and it's rectified already because it's obviously generating in AC, but it's coming out of here straight DC out. And then this is the 240 live, neutral and earth. And again, for the 240 doesn't seem to be any smarts or any rectification or anything going on here. It's literally in through a breaker. The live, the neutral and the earth went straight to these output sockets, straight out of here. Neutral and earth straight out. Neutral and earth, the black and the yellow and green, went straight to the sockets, and the live just went through this slightly dodgy breaker. So I'm just junking that. I'm not using that at all. I'm going to use an RCD box mounted on the framework, so I can go, for safety's sake, just put my 240 straight out of where it's been generated into the RCD, a little consumer unit, and then an output from there to where it needs to go on the van. So that's that. And then in terms of the sort of engine and the rest of it, I've got a wire here which goes up to the ignition coil, which is underneath this panel. This wire is effectively to stop the engine. So when you touch this wire to the engine, to earth, that kills it's basically shorting out the primary winding in the coil, but I'm not going to get into that, the technicals of that. So this wire, whenever it touches ground, there's no spark, so the engine would run without that touching, and as soon as it touches ground, that's how you stop the engine. There's some other wires down here. Are we getting that? Possibly. So there's an oil alert switch, which is effectively a little switch in the side of the crankcase, and when there's no oil in the engine, that little switch is grounded. So this wire coming from the oil alert switch, it also goes through a little resistor as well, but don't need to worry about that. This wire here goes from the oil alert switch, and they join together, and if the oil level drops in the engine, it shorts out this wire, effectively connects this wire to ground and kills the engine. And then we'll have another wire joining these two coming off, going to our kill switch. So they'll be joined together, and there'll be another wire coming off, which will go up to our control panel in the van, so we can start and stop the engine with a switch. Then we've got, are we getting this in shot? There's a wire here, a yellow, it's a red wire with a little white bit of braid on it. That is there's obviously on the other end here, I've taken this cover off and had a look around. I don't want to take it completely apart. There's obviously a generation coil, which is for charging, and it's for charging the start battery. It's very rudimental. There's where's the wire? Oh, it's here. We're getting that. So there's a diode. It plugs in there, and then this diode connects straight to the positive terminal of the battery. Pretty rudimental. There's no charge control, it would seem. There's obviously it's pretty low tech. So there's some AC being generated in the generator. It's rectified through this diode into AC, and it connects straight to the positive terminal of the battery. They're just relying on the resistance of the battery increasing as it gets to fully charged to control the charge. Anyway, so We've got this positive, which goes to positive terminal of the battery. We've got these kill wires, the oil alert and the actual wire going to the ignition coil. And then down here, we've got this little red wire, which goes to the starter solenoid. This one, if you touch this to positive, which you'll do now, it cranks the engine. And it runs, and then you've got to touch that other one to ground. I didn't think that was going to start, then it gave me a hell of a fright. And then you touch this one to ground to kill it, like I just did. So we got start, stop, charge. So those are the 3 wires you need to worry about. And then obviously up here, 240 and 12 volt output, and that's it. So the frame it was in, God, I'm waffling, aren't I? The frame it was in, if you're still with me, you must really want to do one of these conversions. The frame it was in, I think I'm going to junk it. It's a little bit too lightweight and Mickey Mouse. Now I've actually got the engine out of it. It's really thin tubing and not really up to the job. So I'm going to make a little angle iron frame to fit it nice and neat, tuck it up tight under the van. Going to have a consumer unit on the outside here. 240 out plug. And then I'm going to use I'll show you some of it as I'm doing it. I'm going to use a 7-pole, you know, I've got the 7-core wire. Well, a trailer hookup, you know, for the lights on your trailer. That's a 7-pin plug. So essentially what I'm going to end up is a great big lump in an angle iron frame that has got a 240 out plug, a 7-pin out plug, and a fuel line, and that'll be it. So I'll be able to unbolt it and just disconnect everything easy and pull this out from underneath the van. So when it comes time to work on this, or I want to service it or get to it, 4 bolts, and this will just drop down. I'll undo the fuel line and the 2 electrical plugs, and I can just get it out from underneath the van. Anyway, that's my plan. So I need to go buy some steel because I haven't got enough angle, or I haven't got angle of the right size that I need to make the frame work. Anyway, that's an update on the wiring so far. I think I'm going to go and run the cabling on the van now and start working on that, because I've got to wait for the steel to arrive. Coolio. Right, so after much effing around, this is what I've come up with. Paint is only been dry a couple of hours, so I'll be gentle with it, but I've got this framework. Got my engine mountings in, got my little brackets for all my auxiliary little bits. It was a big massive faff, to be honest, because I've been underneath that van so many times, measuring and cutting and remeasuring and recutting. Anyway, we've got there. So the next plan, or the next stage, I'm going to drop the motor back on its mounts, start figuring out how I'm going to do the waterproofing of it with the rubber mat that I showed you earlier on. We're making progress though. Right, onwards. My poor drill. I've got the gearbox on it. Time for a new one, methinks. Lovely job. And I'm going to put some riv nuts. I'll show you what a riv nut is if you don't know in a minute. Right, so riv nuts are, the clue is in the name, riv and nut. It's a rivet and it's a nut. So if we can get one of these bad boys in focus, I will try and show you. Right, hopefully we're getting that in focus. So that is a 10mm riv nut, and then what you do is you have a tool. Actually, I don't need a 10mm one to show you because I've got the 6mm noggin. So you have different ends that fit in the tool, focus. You have different ends that fit in the tool depending on what size your riv nut is. And then basically this tool, you open up your little tool and then you screw your riv nut on like that, and then what you do is you squeeze these handles together squeeze them together, and you basically push that in a hole. I'll show you in the actual framework in a minute. You push that in a hole and it squashes this back bit up. I'll show you in the frame, it'll be easier to explain, but the real handy tool. Use these quite often for various different things. Suzuki's, I know this isn't a motorbike video, but I'm a motorbike guy. Suzuki's use them in their subframes a lot for like holding components onto aluminium box section, and they always come loose. So having one of these tools, you can re-put the tool in and tighten up the riv nut so they don't just, because what can happen is, fucking waffling aren't I, sorry. What can happen is, oh Jim, what can happen is this, when this is in its, is that focus? When this is in its frame, when it's, you know, in the metalwork, they can come loose and you try and do the nut or the bolt up and they just spin round. Anyway, I'll show you putting one in the frame onwards. Right, so what you do is, you've got your riv nut, and you make the hole in the steel work. Obviously, this is a 6mm thread in this riv nut. Hole doesn't want to be 6mm, it's got to be bigger, so you make the right size hole. In this case, I think it's 9mm for this riv nut, and then you screw this riv nut onto the tool like that. And you put it in the hole, and then you pull the handles down. It's quite hard work, like that. And then you unscrew a little noggin on the back. There it is. So you unscrew the noggin on the back, and now you've got a little insert in your frame that you can put a bolt in to bolt things to your metalwork. Like that. Right, stop filming and do some work, Jim. Otherwise it's going to take weeks. Right, so several hours have passed. We are making progress. Got the engine back in the frame. It's pretty much all buttoned up and done, the engine bit. I'll give you a better look at this when it's going in the van, but I've essentially got all my wires going into this RCD box, to sort of using this as a junction box, not only for the 240 stuff, but for all the 12 volt stuff and the control for the engine and the choke. So I've got the I'm going to say stepper motor. I've got the choke control, its name escapes me, motor. Here I've got the 240 coming in this side. This is the, this is 240. This is going to be 240 out to the van, which is basically this plug here. What else we got? So I'm going to have, the battery isn't going to be on here anymore. Originally I was going to have the 12 volt battery to start this down on the framework here. I'm going to have it inside the van next to the fuel tank. So I've got a big heavy duty plug. Can you see this here? So that's going to plug in to the 12 volt battery. There'll be a wiring loom coming down from the chassis of the van, which is going to go to the 12 volt battery to start this bad boy. So that's a plug for that. And then this is going to be all these wires here. So the yellow is going to be when this is live, this is going to start the motor. The red is going to start it. The yellow is going to stop it. I've got a live and an earth here, which are effectively this connection here. Waffling, aren't I? Then I've got these wires here, there's 7 of them. I've got a socket here, which is going to be for all the control, which is going to go up to the control panel, and that's these 7 wires here. Basically, I want to be able to take it off the chassis easy, so everything's going to be on plugs. There's going to be this plug here for the control, this plug here for the battery, for the 12 volt battery in the van, and then this will be the 240 output. This on this wire here. I'll give you a better look at it later on. So I'm just gonna, it's gonna take me a bit of time to figure this wiring out and wire all this up, put this RCD in, button it all up, and then it's done. It's ready to go under the van. I'll test run it on the bench. I'll show you that. Just put some fuel to it and just fabricable some switches just so I can start it, stop it, make sure I've understood the wiring properly. But yeah, progress is being made. It's taken a lot longer than I thought it would, but we're getting there. Right, so that was a long day. It's the following day now. I've just spent 20 minutes, because I was doing that wiring late at night. I've just spent 20 minutes going through my wiring, making sure I'd got everything correct, and it's a good job I did, because I got remember the diode for because it's half-wave rectification thingy bob. I got my diode the wrong way around, is what I'm telling you, for the charging, so I'm glad I just went through everything and checked, because that would have been a problem. I'll give you a little bit of a tour of it now. Now I've got some better light. Yeah, give you a few snapshots of I can't fucking speak. Give you a few snapshots of what I've done. The only janky thing really is this. I'm not 100% happy with this linear actuator, the way it's connected to this choke lever. I've just got it fabricobbled with some cable ties, and that might actually, it's often the case that the simplest solution is the best. I kind of, in my head, I was going to have a little rose joint and a little linkage and make it all nice, but it might end up staying like this. I'm not sure. Certainly in the short term it's going to stay like that. I'm going to get it under the van and get it fitted. And yeah, so down this end I've got, this is a trailer hookup plug with was it 7 wires. One of them I'm not using. I've got 6 wires. I'll show you that in a minute, but that's the sort of control, if you like, from the panel in the van. Once I know everything's working fine, it's not the most waterproof thing in the world. I'll probably put a little bit of Tiger Seal or something around there, keep it all waterproof, like I've Tiger Sealed in here to keep that all watertight. This is the breaker, obviously the RCD and the MCB for the actual power supply. I'm only using one of these breakers, which is a 16 amp. This is it's got an IP rating, this box. There's a rubber seal. It's watertight is what I'm saying. And then it's got this, which quite locks up nice and tight with a seal in it, so that's all waterproof. Yeah, so that's that. So I've just got an adapter in here. This is the power output, which is going to go to feed the van with 240 volts. Just got an adapter in here with a 3-pin plug, a UK 3-pin plug. Just got my workshop Hoover connected so we can do a bit of a load test. I genuinely haven't run it yet. I'm a little bit nervous doing it on camera, but I think it's been through the wiring now for the second time, and I'm pretty sure it should all be okay. I mean, when it was new and I stripped it, it worked fine. So unless I've done something horrific, it should run. Show you the other side, the waterproofness. Yeah, so this is some waterproofiness. This is the side. Are you in focus there? Yeah, I think so. This is the side that's sort of facing forward. The chassis member that it mounts to runs here, and this is sort of the worst exposed bit. The rear axle of the van runs here. But yeah, that's where it's going to get all its weather from, and then round this side here too. That's the other side that's going to get a load of water sprayed up on it. I've sort of paid attention over when I've been thinking about installing this. I've been paying attention to how wet the underside of that van gets where this is going to be on a really rainy day, and it stays pretty dry up under there even when the road's really wet. So I think it's going to I think it's probably going to survive okay. Right, so time to run it. Right, so this here is the end of my control wire. This is what's going to be connected to the control box in the van. So I've got these two here taped together. They're the wires for the actuator for the choke. So depending on the polarity, positive, negative, or negative, positive, you know, if I switch polarity on these two, it'll send the actuator one way or the other. Are we getting that in focus? Can't blooming tell. Hopefully it's in focus. So that's that. That's the stop wire. So whenever that gets an earth, that one shorts out the primary winding in the coil, so that kills the engine. No, that's start actually, ST. So that's the start. So that's the stop wire. That one. So when that gets an earth, that shorts out the coil and kills the engine. This start wire, whenever that's live, it energizes the starter solenoid. We've got a positive and an earth. Yeah, that's it. So we've got positive, positive and negative, start, stop, and the choke. So that's what's going to go to my little control panel. So let me show you the choke. What's the name? The linear. I can't bloody speak today. The linear actuator. Jesus Christ, there must be an abbreviation for that. I'll call it the LA, shall I? Right. So the LA. Sound like an idiot. The LA. The actuator. I'll call it an actuator. The actuator for the choke. So if I get the earth, which is this one, on the live, and I connect them to the. Are we getting this in shot? It's not doing anything. So if I swap them around like that. Fucking hell, still not working. What's happening? Oh, hang on a minute. What's going on? That's the ground. That's the live. What have I done? Ah, there we go. So that's that choke on. And then if I swap these round, I'm sure we're getting this in shot. Swap these back round the other way. Goes back the other way. And that's choke off. As you can see, it's a little bit sketchy. But I don't know. It's the best I could come up with, really. And I think it's probably going to last. It's got 2 cable ties through it. Like I said earlier, the simple solutions are obviously sometimes the best. Anyway, so that's that. Nothing else to see, really. Let's start it up. Or at least try and start it up. We've got a fuel supply hooked up to it. See what happens. Right, okay, so I've also got there, got my voltmeter hooked up to the battery just so I can check the charging, assuming it runs. I've got my workshop hoover plugged in so I can simulate some load on it. Let's see what happens. So focus. So if I where are we? So choke. The choke needs to be put on, so I'll go. Is it that way and that way? No, other way. No, what am I doing? Yeah, that way. Positive to there, negative to there. So there's the choke coming on. Getting that? Right, now. Live to start. Ah, that will wind it over. It should start, and then I've got to quickly, because it doesn't like it. It seems to be a bit odd. It will, even when it's hot, it won't start without choke. And even when it's cold, obviously when it's cold it won't start without choke. It needs full choke just initially to get it to go. And you've got to turn the choke off straight away and it's fine. Hot or cold, that seems to be what it needs to start. Some, is that in focus? Some quirk with a carburetor maybe. So anyway, starty, fingers crossed. Woo! Now choke. Don't panic, everybody! This one and this one. Take the choke off. Oh fuck, my coffee's gonna hit the deck. Right. Put that down there. It runs! Right. And it's charging too. I don't know whether you can see this. 12.5. It was on in 12.4 when it started. Let's see if that goes up. Can you hear me over the noise of this? Yeah, 12.6, so it's charging. Let's turn my hoover on and see what happens. Woo! It's chooching! Bloody marvellous. Right. That's that. Right, now, to stop it, get this to focus. Focus. Where are we? Stop and ground. Should be this to stop it. Oh fuck, what was that falling off the bench? I'm a genius. That's that then. So now I need to, I'm going to run the cables on the van, because this cable that I'm holding here, there's about, 4 or 5 meters of this. This needs to be run along the chassis, as does the power input one. Wire this up to my little control panel I've made, and then somehow fight that massive great big heavy lump onto the chassis of my van. Right, cool mate, cool beans. See you on the other side. There it is, humans. It's in. I don't know what else to say really, other than holy shit, what a mission. I reckon, I don't know what the audio's like on this, guys. It's I've switched cameras because this is wide angle. Yeah, if you're going to do one yourself, it's possible to do it for, I think I've gone a little bit over budget. I think it's probably more like £550. That's just for the materials. So obviously the amount of labour involved when you're making something completely from scratch it's astronomical. If you were paying somebody to do it, you'd probably be better off buying the ready-made one and just attaching it to the chassis, because it's just, although I'm not sure there's a chassis mounted generator available for this van. Anyway, waffling, let me just show you from the front, because you can see how clean this chassis is here. It's a long time since I've washed it, and it stays pretty clean back here. So I'm not, yeah, the weatherproofing I think is going to be, I'll obviously keep an eye on it, but I think it's going to be alright. Let me show you it from the front. Bloody hell, it's like a wind tunnel underneath here. Hopefully you can hear me. There's not really much to see. Let me try and get my camera a bit closer. So you can see that the front section sort of, yeah, you can see where the weather would get in. It's all waterproof from the front here. I think we're good. Got to suck it and see now, I guess. Hey guys, so I've just pulled back in the yard. I've just driven through flipping torrential rain. It's absolutely pissing down. I just thought I'd show you how waterproof this Jenny is. It's wet, but it's not. You can see the sort of inside of that shock there, that's still dry. Yeah, I can live with that, I think. Obviously it's getting a bit splashed. Let's have a look around the other side. Yeah, I think she's doing alright. I'm assuming it still starts, now it's soaking wet. Let's have a look. Chokey. Right, also, hold that thought, it just occurred to me, you haven't had a peek behind the curtain, have you? See what's going on here. Also noticed that this isn't the 3D printed one that I made. It's the same design. I had a piece of flat plate and I thought it looked nicer in aluminium, so I just milled out the little shape, same as the 3D printed piece, just so it looks a little bit more skookum. Take this cover off and you can have a look at the wiring. Okay, don't judge me too harshly. I know it's not heat shrinked. So I've got all my wires soldered on the back here, all sort of self-explanatory. That might look a bit odd, but I've just separated those just so they can't short together or get anywhere close to each other when I push that back in. Yeah, I haven't put heat shrink on anything just because nothing is in there, nothing can touch them, nothing can short them out. Yeah, there's me wiring. Just show you inside the van because there's something interesting in there as well. Righty ho, so we've got a bit going on here that didn't used to be there. Got this little metal plate. I've got two wires coming out. So this thin wire is the power, the 240 power, the mains power from my generator, and that plugs in where my extension lead normally would have plugged in. Basically this socket here feeds the entire van with 240, and then this other thicker wire, this is the 7-core wire, which has got the same gland on the other end here that goes into the time machine, which goes to that little switch panel you've just seen. So that sort of neatens all that up. And then I've got some other funkiness going on because I figured if I've got an onboard generator, it would be nice to be able to use this extension lead. So this is the end of my extension lead, my my pulley out extendable extension lead that I used to use for mains power into the van. I thought it'd be nice to be able to use it for mains power out. So what I've done is I've sort of made a selection of adapters, not exactly 100% health and safety, but it works for me. So what I can do is I can unplug the power feed So this is the feed from the generator, and I can plug it into my extension lead like that, which means the end of the extension lead is live, so you could lick that and have a real good time. And then what I've got is I've got this, hang on a minute, so I've got a series of adapters. I've got this one, which is female both ends. I've got this one, which I think you've seen previously, which is my 3-pin 13 amp UK socket. And then I've also got this one, which is 13 amp wall socket with female on there. So I've got don't waffle, Jim, and be to the point. So I've got my power out of my Jenny going into my extension lead, and then I use this adapter like that, and then I've got a 13 amp socket that I can pull out. I've got a 25 meter extension lead there, so I can power something else external from the van with mains power. I thought that might be kind of useful. I've already actually used it for my chop saw for doing a bit of woodwork just to test it, and it works fine. So that's that. And then if I wanted to power my van, if you like in the old-fashioned way that I used to do, I can plug that into there, and I can plug that into the workshop, and then I can use this adapter. God, it's getting kind of complicated, isn't it? So I've got, this is wall power now into my extension lead like I always used to have, and then if I connect this one to the other end of the extension, I can then feed my van in the old-fashioned way. That makes sense. So I've got all my bases covered. Hopefully that makes sense. Right, onwards. That's on.